Welcome to the Optics Room podcast. This is your host and optometrist, Hasnain Mamdani. Join me weekly where I host expert guests to give us a wider field of view into the world of optics. Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of the Optics Room. I'm honoured today to have Keyur Patel, award-winning optometrist and practice owner as well. Keyur, how are you? Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, dude. I'm very well.
Appreciate your time. Great. So let's get started. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how you got to where you are.
So my name's Keyur Patel. Currently, I'm based in Northampton. I work in private practice most of the time with a little bit of community work in glaucoma clinic. I'm a graduate of City University. 1999, I graduated. 96, okay. I started. And then I went into, I followed the path of most optometrists as we do today. Did a pre-reg. I was at a large multiple. From there, got out of there, chased the most best paying job that I could find. Did that for a year. Really didn't like it. I mean, the money was good, but the experience was not great.
Was that a franchise?
It was a big multiple. It was another big multiple. And so then I went into a smaller, like kind of regional multiple where I really enjoyed the people I worked with. The environment was nice, but I got bored. The practice was very much refract and refer kind of thing. There wasn't much management going on, and that practice had a contact lens practitioner, so I wasn't even doing much contact lenses. It was literally refractions, and I just got bored. I was like, I didn't train to do this. It's not what I was expecting. So my brother had just moved to the States, and I knew the US had a bigger scope of practice. So I thought, well, let's try this. Let's see what the US has to offer. So I applied. I did a 2-year conversion in the US. That was from 2005 to 2007. I did a residency in community health.
In the US?
Yeah, in the US.
Oh, very amazing.
Yeah, and then like my family's still here. So my parents are still here. My dad was traveling a lot at the time. So I thought, right, now let's go home, look after mum, do the typical oldest Indian boy thing, make sure my mum's okay. So I came back, but when I came back, I had a whole new perspective of what optometry can do and what we can offer in terms of a profession. So I went, right, I'm going to go back, but I'm not going back to what I left. I refuse to go back into the things that drove me away from the profession that, essentially bored me senseless. So I came back. I had to do a little bit of the dog work, I guess, just to pay the bills. But whilst I was doing that, I was continually hunting for opportunities. So I got an opportunity. Someone said, oh, look, there's a hospital placement come up. It's just maternity cover, 6 months. I went, okay, fine, I'll do it. So I applied. Glaucoma qualification. I was like, right, fine, I'll do it. Pay the money. It's out of my own pocket, do it. IP, self-funded, but did it. Right. And I did these things and I got these extra qualifications, which made, I'm a bit weird. I hate studying, but when I'm not studying, I get bored.
That's a bit of a conundrum you've got.
Yeah. So got myself through these things, but then used those to my advantage. I mean, I applied for jobs left, right, and center. When I was really lucky about in the last decade, I met 2 unbelievably passionate contact lens practitioners. So there's Shelley Bansal in Eastcote and Brian Tompkins, who I work with now. And they really raised my interest in contact lenses. So then I got on the contact lens thing as well. Nice. So, and that's where my interest, one of my many interests is now. So that's where I am. I've traveled. I lived in the States. I've been back, but and you know what? I'm old, right? And I have experience, and I just used that to just keep going forward because I was just to stop the boredom. essentially.
And then, so all your experience has now led into the services that you provide at your independent practice?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, if you look at the college's guidelines, GOCs, everything has to be within your scope of practice and within your realms of um, practical experience. Which is a bit silly, bit stupid, because how can you get experienced at something if you don't practice it,
Yeah.
right? So I'm more inclined to go, I was very lucky, I've worked with people, and the profession is such a small place, and for the most part the profession's really friendly place. You can reach out to anyone, and as long as you're not taking the mick, right, and if you ask nicely, I've never met a practitioner who said, no, I won't help you.
Yeah,
No,
absolutely.
I can't help you.
Yeah.
They may decline, and they may have their reasons to decline. Um, but the profession's really nice. So, you ask questions and people will help you out. You go to conferences, you go to face CE, you meet people, you meet your peers, you make friends, and you just keep learning. You just keep learning and you pick bits and pieces.
And
You
it's such
pick
a
up
small
new.
world as well. You're bound to pick up golden nuggets from anyone that you meet. And you might even be practicing with them in a year's time and you just met them, for example.
Exactly, and
Exactly.
it's in that sense it's fantastic, and you can just keep learning.
Good.
So yeah, it's good.
So I just want to pick up on a couple of things that you just mentioned. All right, at the beginning, you mentioned that you got bored and you didn't enjoy the massive franchise machine that you're working in. That's a sentiment of a lot of optometrists even today, and it's not something that's come about quite new. What was it about that franchise model, that environment, that you didn't enjoy?
For me, it was it was refractory refer. Uh, It was like, well, what was the and I and there were elements of it which was a bit like working in a factory.
Yeah.
And I'm a bit sarcastic. I'm like, well, my parents used to have a shop. It's easier to sell 20 Benson and Hedges in a newspaper than try and force someone to have an AR coat that they don't want, or a
Yeah.
second pair of specs that they don't want. I don't mind making a recommendation. I don't mind making an appropriate suggestion for what product the patient should have. But when the emphasis became very much retail, and in all honesty, the job I left to go to the States wasn't like that. They
Okay.
they were they were really good. They let me do what I wanted to do, and the dispensing and the front house did what they had to do.
Yeah.
Is when I came back. Actually, I worked for a laser company, a very big company that does a lot of laser, and they were grading me on a week to week of how much laser I sold,
Okay.
and it was just like, yeah, not for me,
Okay, that's
kind of
interesting.
thing.
So, I totally get what you're saying about not pushing the customer for the AR coating or for the second pair for the transitions. Now you have your own practice as well, and an element of the P&L does come into it.
Yep.
So, how do you combine the two and ensure that you get the best of both worlds?
So, firstly, we're just honest with our patients. We're honest. If a patient needs a new product, we'll tell them you could do with a new product. We never do a hard sell. We always look at their product to say, well, look, these are scratched almighty. You might want to think about an update. But also, we charge appropriately for our clinical time, right?
That's
Uh,
lacking a lot in this industry.
so my eye exam, and this is still probably not the full price. We still subsidize it a little bit. Is £150.
Okay, and what's included?
Uh, OCT, Optos, um, IOPs, visual fields if needed, Pentacam if needed,
Now,
K5
obviously, a
if needed.
customer doesn't understand what these are. So, how do you put that into layman's terms where the customer is willing to pay a premium for and understand that they're actually going to get value from something?
So, firstly, you have to spend time with them. All right. If you're going to do all of these extra assessments, no point doing it if you can't explain it to your patient.
Yeah.
Right. So, today, great example, had a young gentleman come in just early 40s. First time he'd come to see us, moved to the region, never had always been to other multiples, whatever, before. And he was an isometropic amblyop. And no one had ever explained to him that he was an isometropic amblyop in 40 years. No one had taken the time to say, this is why you have a lazy eye. We have axial length because we do a lot of myopia management. So I put him on our axial length machine and went, look at the difference between your right eye length and your left eye length. One was 30 plus mil, the other one was 25. Showed him his OCT. No one had ever shown him an OCT. Showed him his Optos. And just the amount you can get from just spending a bit of time with a patient, just to explain that if you're doing the test is one thing, but if you don't explain it, you might as well have not done it.
Yeah.
Because as far as the patient's concerned, there's no benefit in that. So you have to explain it. You have to explain the benefit to it. You have to explain the benefit of long-term follow-up. Because again, no point doing it if you're not going to continue to do it down the line, whether that's in 1 year, 2 year. You have to have that decision. And that's what patients appreciate. And so we're totally honest. I'm honest with my patients. I say, look, I love to sell you spectacles. When I sell you I'm not going to lie to you and say, I don't want to sell you spectacles. But I know if you don't buy your specs from me, that I can still pay my bills.
And that's quite important. So now your focus has shifted from getting that profit from the customer to then just providing the best value you can because your income is already there.
Yeah. And more often than not, the patient appreciates that. They will, if nothing else, they will look and consider your product.
Yeah.
Right? They'll look at it, and we charge, we are a premium eye exam. We also we sell premium product.
Yeah.
And so with that, we have to provide the service, and that's what we do. And more often than not, they may not purchase at that particular point.
But they'll refer to friends and family, or they'll come back when they're ready.
But they will come back when they're ready to purchase.
Right? I love how you put an emphasis on explaining the tests that you're doing and the extra scans that are available. There's people today that don't even explain the fundus picture to the patient. But sometimes when you're working like in a factory and it's just one after the other, your focus loses.
Yeah, you don't have time, right? How can you, if you're expected to talk about, let's call it the retail element of it, coatings and all the additional stuff, which does have clinical benefit. But if you're expected to talk about that and you're expected to talk about fundus exam, where do you find the time? What don't you do? Do you not do a proper symptoms and history? Do you not use the slit lamp? What bit don't you do? When I was, I'm 20 years deep, right, in terms of qualification. And when I qualified, people were testing at 20 minutes. Now people are still testing at 20 minutes, but they're expected to review an OCT or review an Optos or maybe a topography or whatever one piece of kit is that one piece of go-to kit that practice has.
And do a contact lens fitting as well.
And it just doesn't work.
I want to touch a bit about your experience in the States. Actually, I've never met anyone who's worked there. What comparisons did you see and what do they do that we don't do?
I mean, there are elements of the States that are very much like the UK. You can be in a practice that is very much retail driven. But what is great about the States is you can be in a practice that is very clinically driven. So you could earn a good living, do really well for yourself, and never have to look at a set of spectacles, never have to touch a contact lens. Just because you can do the disease side of stuff, depending on where you are. You can also make great specialty practices. I find that if you look at the really, really big worldwide known specialty practices, a lot of them are in the US because they dedicate themselves to one specialty in such a way that you're not going there for anything else. And the American public know that if they want certain level of care, they're going to have to invest in it. And for those who want to invest in it, they invest in it. They'll travel.
Yeah.
In the UK, we're a bit spoiled. We have the NHS, which is a fantastic service, but it's not designed to be in the high street. It can't specialize in everyone.
No, and we're still giving away free eye tests, so the public is never going to value
And
the
yeah,
time that they spend on the chair.
the general public, for the most part, unfortunately, and you know what, this is not the general public's fault. This is the profession's fault. The general public is not aware of what we offer until you save someone's eye or you save their life, and there's a small piece in the local newspaper to say, Mr. or Mrs. Optometrist saved John Smith's eye by finding a tumor because they did
Apart
a
from that,
visual
it's
field
just
test.
what's my prescription.
That's it.
That's it.
When the big boys, the people who have the millions of marketing budgets, if their message is buy one get one free, right? That unfortunately is what the public see, and that is their perception of the whole profession, rather than what we can actually offer.
Yeah.
I think COVID also, when we weren't even considered health professionals for 4 to 6 weeks, I think that was a big indicator of what the other health
Yeah.
professionals sometimes think of us.
Let's dive down a bit into us as an optometrist. What do you think is lacking in the modern day optom? Is it the desire to learn more? Is it just being used to saying 1 and 2? What's lacking?
I think, and this, I don't know if this is controversial or not, I think there's too many optometry schools. And I think that has meant that getting into optometry school is possibly a bit easier. And the people that are getting in don't have the drive to be elite eye care professionals.
So
And
what's
that
your opinion on the apprenticeship scheme?
I wasn't a fan of that at all.
Yeah.
And I have no issues with apprenticeship schemes. I think there is a place for them. I think everyone should be entitled to an education, and there should be different ways to access it. But and that's my wife just putting her bag in.
No worries. Hello.
But we are a health profession, right? And I couldn't understand how you can have someone doing, let's say, a slit lamp health assessment if they don't understand the basic principles, ocular anatomy and disease of the eye before they're on a slit lamp. So what do you teach them? Do you teach them slit lamp first? Do you teach them disease first? How do they learn? So that for me was a big concern, and I thought that was potentially a risk to to public health. I think the other big thing was the people that were driving it. It was being driven by corporate optometry that as far as we know, and they were really secretive about it. They kind of didn't want to tell anyone. Kind of appeared out of somewhere because someone was being nosy, and when you've got that level of secrecy behind it, just made me very, very suspicious. And having worked in retail outlet, I was biased. I was like, I've worked in retail. I don't understand how they're going to be able to, how these directors, supervisors are going to be able to give these people enough supervision to make sure that they are safe, to make
And
sure
the
that
public is safe as well.
the public is safe. More
Yeah.
importantly, you're right. And the cynic in me thought it was just a way of getting cheap refractionists.
Yeah.
That was the cynic in me, and I'll be very honest about that.
So, as an optometrist, what kind of career should we be aiming for, and how do we get there?
You know what? I think that this is not just about being an optometrist. I think about any career, you've got to find your happy place. And for me, refract and refer, that bored me. It wasn't me, right? But for many optometrists, they like that. It's a simple life for them, right? They can go to work Monday to Friday, Monday to Saturday. They can do their hours, and
Get
for
a
them
good
that
salary, go home, and that's it.
they're content with that. And if you're content with that, good for you. Live your best life. For me, it had to be more than that. So I think whatever you do, whatever line of work you're in, it's about pushing yourself to keep yourself interested in what you're doing. With an optometry, we're very lucky. We're very, very lucky. You can do therapeutics, you can do specialty contact lenses, low vision, pediatrics. There are so many subspecialties within the under the umbrella, but it's finding that thing that keeps you passionate and that keeps you
Yeah.
interested.
What kind of
Um,
mindset is needed to be successful? So you've gone through so many courses yourself. You've done IP, you've done medical retina, glaucoma, etc., and you're probably still looking at other things as well. Um, how do you have the mindset to just keep on going? Because it's a lot.
it it is, but it's really hard to answer that. You either have it or you don't have it, kind of thing. So for me, and I'm really honest about it, a big thing that drives me is boredom. When I get bored, I need to find that next thing to keep me interested.
Yeah,
I also have FOMO. So when I see other people doing really well, I'm like, well, I want to do that. That's really interesting. How do I get a piece of that? How do I do some of that?
yeah,
And that's what drives me, just to keep being, I mean, again, whatever profession you're in, I think you should be happy, but you should be driving to be the best professional that you can be.
yeah.
And the
In
only
whatever
way
field
you
you
can
are.
do that is by keep investing in yourself, reinvesting in yourself, and sometimes reinventing yourself.
Yeah, I'm sure you've heard of the saying that you're the outcome of the five average people that you surround yourself with. Do you think that this would also apply to this profession, where you keep in contact, you have a close network of people who excel in what they do within optometry, and then as a result of that, that would motivate you to get to their level?
Oh, definitely, definitely. I think I'm very, very lucky at the moment. I work with two unbelievably talented optometrists, who have very different areas of subspecialty, and you work with them, and you're inspired. It's inspiring to work with them. I think for people who are not able to, for let's say you locum and you're hopping from pillar to post, I think for that subgroup of optometrists, you've got to get yourself out there. You've got to be, going to conferences and things like that, and brushing shoulders with these optometry great minds.
It's quite difficult for locums, isn't it? You just go in, you go out, you don't get to meet anyone, you don't get to connect or make that connection. So you've got to work triple just to make yourself heard. Whereas as a resident or part resident, you have that connection there. It's
Yeah, you can
easier.
build relationships, and I think a couple of I've heard it a couple of times where it's been touted that what once you've qualified, you should have to be a resident for a couple of years before going into locum work, and I don't think there's anything bad in that.
I
Um,
agree. I think at
just
least a year, if anything, it
yeah,
gives you that support where you come across conditions, you still got people around you to help you out, and you get a taste of the real world with a safety net as well.
yeah, and what whether you're 20 years in, 30, 40 years in, as some of my colleagues are, you're always going to be learning. You're always going to be learning. So 1 year out, at 22, 23, as much as we thought we knew,
Yeah.
we really didn't know
No,
that
absolutely.
much. All we really knew how to do was kind of refract. Okay. And even then, 5 years in, your refraction will be different. The way you approach a refraction and do things will be different.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you think the future will be in 5, 10 years' time? What do you think the future holds for optometry?
So I think that we're going to get more and more automation. Or
AI?
sorry,
AI?
AI. Not. I don't know if we're quite ready for AI yet. You're still going to need someone to get the message across, to share the message. You're still going to need someone to do the scans and stuff. But you see these distance refraction machines. And if some people have their way, refraction will be deregulated,
Yeah.
or it will be allowed to be a something that you can delegate.
What do you think of remote eye exams?
Pros and cons. I think
Yeah.
if you're doing it in a controlled environment for someone, let's say let's say it's a 6-month contact lens follow up. You know that patient comes in, they're unable to get to you. They need a quick check. You can have an assessment. There are enough good tools out there to do it. I think that's fine. I think it's very scary if it's totally unregulated. Um, Purely from a public health point of view, is that in the UK, people would not get their eyes examined if they were not getting their refraction checked.
Yeah.
So if you put your refractions online, people are less likely to get their eye examined, and you're more likely to miss those quiet conditions like glaucoma,
I think
because
as
people
things are
won't go.
changing, it's more important now than ever than to educate the public about what an eye exam actually does, because soon they'll perceive it to be nothing more than just a prescription, which is what a lot of people see anyway. But as things change and remote eye exams come in, and if refraction does become deregulated, the public needs to know: am I still going to be okay? Is my eyes still healthy?
Yeah, and this is the public. This is the profession's job, right? Now we educate our patients as much as we can, but we're not going to be reaching the millions of people in the UK. So that's up to. Well, I don't know who it's
Yeah.
up to. The GOC don't think it's up to them.
There's a lot
College,
of bodies in optometry, isn't there? And
yeah, but no one
difficult to
seems
know
to.
who to go to for what.
Yeah, no one seems to know whose job it is to really push the public message. I can't
Yeah.
figure it out after 20 years. Everyone
Maybe
does a
it's your
little
job,
bit.
Keyur.
Sorry?
Maybe it's your job.
Maybe.
What finally, just want to know from your perspective, what skills does an optometrist need to develop to still be relevant in 10 years' time?
10 years' time, I think you are going to need to be able to offer something beyond refraction. So, in my case, therapeutics and specialty lenses. That and sports vision, they're really my things. But it could be pediatric vision, could be binocular vision, it could be low vision. I think you have to have a skill set that can't be put online,
Yeah.
um, and and to get that, you have to be passionate about it. Also, I think optometrists have to they have to get this balance between appreciating their value but not overvaluing themselves, because sometimes optometrists will be like, well, I want this much, and you kind of sit there and think, but why do you want that much?
Yeah.
Are you actually worth that much?
I think
um
optoms maybe have been spoiled, or locum rates have increased exponentially, especially from COVID, where people now may feel more entitled to more than what's ever been offered in the past.
yeah, I think COVID was a very good leveler, because it allowed a lot of people to just cut ties. But then when things started to come back, locums essentially got their own back and went, well, see how you
Yeah.
guys were to me when it was tough for me. Now, if you want me to work,
Yeah.
these are my,
Yeah.
these are my, this
I
is
do
my
see it
criteria.
averaging out over time anyway. As with anything, there's ups and there's downs, but with any big event, it's going to fluctuate or have highs and lows or peaks and troughs.
I mean, locum rates. I mean, when I graduated a long time ago, it was only about 250 they were paying, and that was a long time ago, and now
Yeah.
it's not much more.
Yeah, so I guess even if you look at it from the locum's perspective, with inflation and costs and bills, um, the rise that they're getting, or the small that they have gotten, hasn't been enough to cover what the expenses are.
Yeah,
So,
it's not. We're not MPs. We're not getting year on year um, uh, price rises with inflation that match
and lunch
inflation.
allowances.
Yeah, lunch allowance, exactly. Two homes. We're not getting that.
That's it.
And I think that there's going to have to be a balance point. I think optoms are going to have to be be realistic about where they want where. The thing is, there's so many optoms coming out, and unfortunately, we'll undercut each other uh, to get the job. I
Yeah,
think the nice thing about not pre-reg about the apprenticeship was the fact that they did get a union together, and for the first time in my career, I saw optometry band together and go, "We don't want this." Doesn't mean
Yeah,
it's not going to happen. Unfortunately, I don't know what's going on
I think
in
it
the
started. It
background.
started.
You know, but
Yeah,
it's good to see the profession band
yeah.
together and go, this is not safe for the public.
Yeah. Well, let's see what happens in the future. I think the main thing is for the optometrist himself or herself is, as you said, specialize in a niche where it can't be replaced by a robot or a computer or something that can be done remotely. It's a very special section that needs special care.
I think
So yeah,
therapeutics is a big one because the NHS, we know the NHS is struggling. It's struggling to manage its patient load.
yeah,
And if you can do it in the community, you'll be doing a service to your community, and you'll be taking some of the burden off of the NHS. But caveat, you can't give it away. You can't go, oh, I'll do MEX, hoping that you'll steal that patient and then they'll buy specs from you.
that's a
You can't do that. You've got to say, I'll do it. I'll do it properly, but that has to be an income stream. That's not trying to ultimately get them in to sell
yeah.
them specs, because that's
Yeah,
the
well,
problem.
I guess that chair time then needs to be compensated fairly. If you're not going to try and steal that patient away to try and buy glasses for a plus or 50 ad, for example, you know.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, but anyway, Kaya, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you taking time out. Your insights have been invaluable, and it's been great to get your perspective from a US state as well. It was great to get to know someone who's worked there and how they've brought their skills over here as well. And I wish you all the best and continuing to inspire the community. So
Thanks
thank
very
you so
much, mate.
much.
Cheers.
Thanks.